Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Liam. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. You're someone I got personally recommended to speak to from a past podcast guest who specializes in directories. And upon kind of looking into more of your history, I can see that you've been in this industry for a while. So I was wondering if you could take me back to 2009. So I'm going to jog your memory a little bit. Previous to working in SEO, you were a marketing manager, product manager, a business development manager. In that point in 2009, what really prompted that shift into SEO specifically? What was so important? What was so enticing?
Yeah. So I go way back. I got into SEO, I think in 96 before Google was called Google. I'm not going to bore you with the whole background, but I guess I was one of the first people that really got into SEO early on. And then I was always fascinated with search engine optimization. I was an employee for a very long time. 2009, finally had it. I'm like, I'm getting a little bit older. It's probably time to start my own business. SEO was growing like crazy. Everybody had a website, right? So I'm like, I just decided after reading a horoscope that if I don't make a change today, I'll regret it forever. I'm like, okay, I don't believe in horoscopes, but that sounds good. So I quit my job, started my business, Boulder SEO Marketing, still my business. And yeah, it was a good decision. I think I had funding for about 2 months. I just got divorced, just part-time single dad. I'm like, all in, I'm gonna do this. Either I do it now or I will never do it. And then it was profitable, I think, week 6. And then obviously a lot has changed since 2009, right? When I initially started this business. Now, finally, something is changing in the world of SEO. I guess now we call it GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, which, we'll probably talk about here later in this podcast. So for a long time, not much changed, although the Google SERP, the search engine results pages interface, changed over time. They made a lot of algorithm updates, but it was relatively easy to keep up. Now AI is a game changer, and I am so thrilled about it. Finally, something interesting is happening. And I believe, because I've been doing this so long, we have a great advantage, my business and I, and that's what we're working on heavily, integrating AI into our processes, everything that we do. In a nutshell, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Some good background. I really want to get into GEO. Is that the term that everyone's using? I feel as if it's still up in the air, the council of like if that's the term that we're going for.
It seems like a term that more people are using now. I came up with a massively long term that I can't even remember, but it like described every step of GEO. I know I'm not going to bore you with that. So I personally actually like to use the term GEO, Generative Engine Optimization. Seems to make sense right now, but I'm sure the last word has not been spoken yet. So I'm excited to see what other terms people are coming up with.
Yeah, we'll see. Everyone loves an acronym, and I guess to the layman, a lot of feedback I get around SEO is that it can be quite confusing for someone first looking into it. So I was wondering if we could start with you clearing up some key acronyms and some key terms in SEO in general, just a kind of 30-second explanation of what they are. I'll start with, I guess, the easiest. What is SEO for the layman?
Yeah, search engine optimization refers to the practice of naturally, organically optimizing a website or digital entities so that they show up in the non-paid search results in Google and other search engines such as, Search GPT, Perplexity, Claude, these generative engines, AI engines. So that's SEO. You want to show up organically in the non-paid results, ideally high up where people will engage with your listing.
Okay. Further than that, what are EAT principles or EEAT principles?
Yeah, it's one of the most important things anybody can do nowadays. There's two subcategories when you think about EEAT: experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Let me take a step back. Now, anybody can go to one of these tools, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Gemini, etc., and just whip up a ton of AI generated content that is not net new content. It's spun content. These tools feed on existing content out there, and they just put something together that sounds really good, right? Naturally, like a human actually wrote it. So these search engines, including Google, they have to find a way to distinguish the best content from low quality content. All the AI generated content that doesn't provide value or net new value is going to get demoted, de-indexed, because if these search engines show that kind of content and doesn't provide value to the reader, they're going to move on to the next search engine, right? So that's something they're all struggling with. They are still trying to figure out how to surface the best content for the right person in the right situation for the right search term, right? That is only possible if these tools are able to identify if it's a credible source. Let's call it the website at this point, the different sources, their apps, whatever, floats around there on the internet. So they have to identify, is it a credible website? My website's been around for a long time now, 2009. It has a high domain authority. So naturally, like we have an advantage, right?
Explain that for me. High domain authority. How does that come
Yeah.
to be and what is that?
It's a number out of 100. The higher that number associated with your website, the higher the authority of the website. So Wikipedia, I think, it's close to 100, because Google and these other search engines, they know it's a reputable, trustworthy place where, they have humans that actually control the content. So the higher the domain authority, the higher the trust of this website, the faster these search engines will rank the content that's being published on these websites. Okay, so that's one thing, the domain authority. Google does no longer publish. They had a tool where they actually told you, hey, the DA of your website is XYZ. People started to obsess about it, so they killed that. Probably, I
Mm.
guess, about 8 something years ago. But a lot of tools like SE ranking that's my favorite SEO tool. They have a internal algorithm where they will assign a domain authority or whatever they call it, so that you have an idea, what that number is associated with your website, because it's very important. You want to build the authority of your website. Then the second piece is the EEAT score of the person associated with writing and publishing the content on that website. I'm speaking globally about SEO, GEO, AI, and all that stuff, right? So we do a lot of press releases. People write about me. I get invited to speak on podcasts like yours. Everything that we do online gets noticed by these search engines because they have to rank people that create content on the internet, because then together with the domain authority of a website and the EAT score of a person, the higher those two things are, the easier it's going to be for you to rank in organically in Google and other search engines. And that's what we're heavily focusing on at my company here, to help companies and people boost their credibility in the eyes of these search engines.
Why, when you're referring to EEAT principles, do you specifically talk about it as a person?
Because Google will apply, or when I talk about Google, I also mean these other tools, Perplexity, Claude, etc., right? they have to figure out, is that person trustworthy? Because if they rank content, of a low quality website by, let's say, somebody has no idea about SEO, but they just use AI tools to generate, a good sounding piece of content, it's not going to resonate well with their audience. Eventually, the cover will blow and people will leave that tool because they don't trust that they're being served with the best content or what they're looking for. That's why building your personal brand and domain authority or EAT score, critically important. Critically important.
Interesting. I want to break down these principles in general. So EEAT, something you mentioned there is that novelty is important. So if you're just churning out something that's been made with ChatGPT and Claude, there's not a high likelihood that that's going to be ranked highly. But if you're generating original content and putting that out online, then that does actually help with those principles. Talk to me beyond just novelty. What else is important in making content that is valuable and trustworthy?
Yeah, so anybody listening to this podcast, I highly recommend that just do a Google search for uh, Google's helpful content creation guidelines. They actually tell you exactly what you need to do and what you don't need to do. At the end of the day, I'm not sure if you ever listened to John Mueller. He's the search liaison at Google for us SEOs. The one thing that he always stresses is like, create helpful content that specifically addresses somebody's needs or problems. Just don't create content for the sake of creating content. Okay. There's so many agencies or people that still try to game the system they waste so much time, money, and resources on creating crappy content just for the purpose of ranking. Get away from that, you know? My company, we're actually transitioning from being an SEO company. We're now a content marketing agency that heavily uses AI as part of the process, a very complex process that we develop. And we're really good at SEO, right? And all we do, I would say, 90+% is completely white hat. And there's a little bit of gray area where, we know the
Sorry,
algorithm.
to stop you. Can you explain white hatting and black hatting for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So white hat refers to SEO strategies that are according to the book, right? They're Google, they have all the rules on their website. They're like, hey, you can do this, and this. And then black hat, those are strategies like buying backlinks, very common in this industry, sadly. Adding white content on a white background on a page that used to be done a long time ago. Strategies where you purposely try to deceive the search engines for the purpose of ranking, at the top in these search engines. The white hat, completely, by the rules. Black hat, you try to game the system. Gray hat, it's like sort of like in between. If you do the stuff, we're gonna help you, but you're not gonna get penalized. So we do, I would say, 90+% completely white hat. And then, because I've been doing this for like nearly 30 years, I know what's working, I know what's not working. So we tap a little bit into the gray area, but I want to, I make sure that we're not going to get slapped for what we do.
Talk to me about this transition. You mentioned how you'd moved from referring to yourself as an SEO company to a content marketing company. Why the change?
So let's sort of talk about GEO, Generative Engine Optimization. Um, these tools, including, let me start with Google. One of the big problems that they had was dealing with gated content, user-generated content like, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc., etc. At some point, this content that people created user-generated content was gated. So Google could not get into these platforms to index and serve that content. That has changing. July 10th, I think Google started to index Instagram post content. Why? Because it's a relevant platform, right? A lot of people, they will post interesting, useful information on these platforms. So a lot of information is being published in on various different platforms, and these search engines need to get access to this content because it will allow them to surface the best content in relation to what somebody is searching for. If you think about, we got 5 kids. They predominantly use TikTok and other platforms. They don't necessarily use certain platforms. So Google, if they want to stay in business or stay relevant, they need to be able to access all of that content that's being posted out there that used to be gated back in the day. If you think about Reddit, you do a Google search, probably gonna see a AI generated thing at the very top, and then very likely there's going to be a section with Reddit posts, et cetera, or Quora. So things are changing dramatically. Not sure if this started to answer your question. I'm happy to
No,
elaborate more.
there's a lot of kind of changes that have happened in the SEO landscape. I've only been in this kind of scene for a couple of years, but I was wondering if you could take me kind of through the major changes from your perspective. Obviously, we've got algorithm updates, we've got AI overviews that came into the space, and now we've got the kind of rise of how people are using different search engines and different AI models to search for information. So I was wondering if you can kind of take me through like the biggest shifts and what that's meant for you in SEO as well.
Yeah. So we, not too long ago, all you had to do is create content and publish it on websites, right? Because these search engines would discover content on websites, right? Now, these search engines, as I just mentioned, they take a look at all the content in every place. So that is now the difference between SEO, in my opinion, and GEO, where we need to publish more content in more places to increase our chance that, we're going to show up in as many of these platforms with our content as possible. So when we published a piece of content, we published the best piece of content on the website. We then use a trickle down strategy where, hey, we're going to do posts for Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to do a press release about that piece of content. We're going to get into Quora. So we're making that piece of content available or talk about in all these other places. And that's basically the practice of GEO, where you get into way more different places because different people are using these different places to look for things. Most likely, they will also use one of these tools, including Google, Perplexity, Claude, etc., for their main search behavior. These search engines, including Google, they now need to index content of other search engines and surface them in their platform. I hope that makes sense, but to me, that's sort of
Yeah,
like Geo explained in a nutshell.
I think we can tie things together as well. So what I want to understand is I've heard this referred to as search everywhere optimization, right? You want to have your content across as many platforms as possible. Why is that important for the likes of Claude, Perplexity, ChatGPT? Why is it important that it's everywhere in comparison to traditional SEO where you could just publish one article and find it? Tie those pieces together for me.
And I think that's a term Neil Patel came up, search everywhere. I think a lot of people like that term. I think it's sort of true. I wouldn't go that far, search everywhere. I think when we take on a client, we think about the end, right? At the end, there's the person that will buy the product or service that our customer has to offer. And then in the middle, that's where the strategy resides, and how are we going to make that connection? So would I call it search everywhere? Not really. I would say selected search in the right places. So if we have let's say a landscaper and they want to get more clients from, let's say, the Boulder, Colorado area or Denver, Colorado area, so you got to be in the right places outside of the customer's website where people are like me. I have a house, I have a yard, right? If I need a landscaper, I may check local forums where people talk about, the landscaper that they had a good experience with, right? I may go to other search engines before hitting Google, or maybe if, I start with Google and then Google shows me discussion forums in whatever platform, then I head over there. That's where you need to be. So you got to be in the right place in relation to where people consume content that is relevant for the product or service that they want to buy. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And what I'd really like to do is kind of tap into your brain in terms of what you're noticing working in terms of like generative engine optimization. But before we do something, I think that would be helpful in terms of setting context is, in your experience, how is search volume changing? Because from what I've looked into it, like more and more people are using these AI models to search for information. The traffic is reducing on Google websites. AI overviews are taking a lot of people's traffic kind of overnight. So like help me set some context to how people are searching information, how that's changing, and how well they can do with SEO.
Have you heard of the term the great decoupling? That's a thing that's going on right now as of the recording of this podcast, where you just addressed it, right? Google is keeping a lot more people on their website with AI overviews. Soon, AI mode is launching, rolling out as we speak, an advanced version of AI overviews. So we're seeing that if your website is being cited as a trustworthy source in one of these AI overviews, it actually counts as an impression, right? So we see in Google Search Console, it's like this crocodile where impressions go up, but clicks stay the same or even go down. Because Google, right, they want to show people the right kind of content in the best possible way. Oftentimes, that means that they can do that by showing an AI overview. People don't necessarily need to go over to a website. I think probably 80 to 90% of all searches, they're just of like informational behavior where I just need to know something. I really don't need to go to a website, nor do I care what website it is, So I'm totally happy just getting my information from, AI overviews or GPT or whatever tool you prefer. So impressions go up, clicks stay the same, or actually go down. Is that a bad thing? Depends, not necessarily. I could care less if my traffic for my website goes down by 90%, but the 10% of people that actually get to my website, they want to, hire us to do their SEO or GEO, whatever, we want to call it. This is what we're seeing, and this is also what Sundar Pichai is getting a lot of heat from us SEO people. It's like, hey, you guys are keeping more and more traffic on your website, and our clients are going crazy because they're freaking out. They're getting less traffic. So Google, they're now saying, hey, the traffic that we send to websites is of way higher quality than the volume that you got not too long ago. But we're gonna work on sending more traffic to websites because obviously Google is realizing that it's a problem, that they're keeping a lot more traffic on their website. So we're in this gray area phase right now where things are being figured out. But to answer your question, I think for the foreseeable future, we're going to see traffic go down, impressions go up. However, what I'm seeing is that the traffic that we're getting, the clicks, they're way higher quality than what we used to get not too long ago.
Interesting. And if that's changing as a landscape, where do generative AI models such as Perplexity, Claude, ChatGPT come into the picture? How are you optimizing for them? We've spoke to people, we've introduced Robots.txt files, LLMs.txt files, we've changed the way that we do content. I know that you guys have your micro SEO strategies. It's a
Yeah.
patented methodology, so I don't know how much you can actually reveal, but talk to me about how you're seeing people currently optimize for these engines and like what you see as a good opportunity here.
Yeah. So the micro SEO strategies methodology, it's not rocket science. I mean, we patented, we trademarked the methodology because I figured, it sounds good and it works, so might as well do that. It is a multi-step process where we now heavily use AI for the part of doing a lot of the research. One critical element of the MicroStrategies methodology is that in relation to the search terms that we try to rank organically in Google and these other search engines, we do a search in Google, right? If it triggers an AI overview, we scrape that content. Then we do the same thing with Perplexity, Claude, etc. So we run that search term and we take a look at what are these tools, populating. Then we use our technology to basically analyze all of that content because we know for a fact that in relation to that search term, these tools are spitting out that content. So that must be the most relevant information in relation to the search term. And then we have already a really good basis, right? Then we know this is probably stuff that we need to include in that content. And then our BSM Copilot, does a lot more research where we take a look at the top 10, 20 ranking websites or piece of contents in relation to the search term. We run a deep analysis on what's currently ranking. Or we take a look at, what are the elements? Are there FAQs? Are there tables? Is there something that we need to have in our piece of content as well? So we just do a very deep, thorough competitor analysis and AI overview analysis. And then at the end of the day, a tool spits out a outline that I guarantee you is 10 times better than what's currently ranking at the top in Google and showing up in GPT, Perplexity, Claude, etc. So that's what we create for the website, right? So we create the ultimate piece of content that's 10 times better than anything else that's ranking on the internet. And then we can actually use our AI to dissect it into a press release, to, a Quora post, into a Twitter post, into LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's basically in a nutshell our micro SEO strategies explained, probably the 15-20% of it. There's a lot more to it. Yeah.
That maybe you can't reveal. So, from what I'm hearing, one is creating the best quality piece of content possible. With that, I have a question with that. Do you then add any kind of more feedback or instruction or commentary on top of that content that just comes from you as an individual or from an SEO expert? Obviously, you're using all these AI engines, pulling from all these resources, creating that ultimate piece of content. Do you then add any original commentary on top of that?
So we now use a hybrid strategy where for every client, we create a micro language model where we create basically a virtual client. We scrape all of their, if the CEO has done a lot of interviews like this, or YouTube videos, or, manuals that talk about the products or services, right? We take all of that information and we create a micro language model that sits on top of, one of these models, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, whatever, but it's a contained language model where we then pre-populate the content after creating the outline, because we don't just use AI, openly available AI tools. We use content from already the client that they have created, and then we have humans, after the content is pre-populated in some cases, that go in and review, heavily edit the content to make it even more human-like written. But this works extremely well. So my recommendation, anybody listening out there, create a micro language model, feed it with all the high quality content that you have personally created. It works amazingly well. My team has access to a virtual Chris because I travel a lot. I'm busy. I wish I had more hours in my day. So they can simply go to virtual Chris. I get a lot of requests or invites to provide a quote for a roundup. They can simply use virtual Chris, and then our head of content takes a look at what the AI created and say, yeah, that's we feel comfortable sending that over. And it's as I wrote it, but I only see it when it gets published. And they're like, hey, happy to announce you have been published in our roundup. Yeah.
I think I've done enough interviews as well. I need to make a virtual Liam
Yeah.
for my company as well. I think that's the next step here.
Yeah. No, even so, right now I'm testing. I just created a 30 plus page prompt sequence where, I'm going to get access to the transcript of this conversation that we have. I can run that through our tool and then give it a few instructions where I say, hey, I want you to create a blog post where we focus on, X, Y, Z. It will spit out a summary blog post about this conversation. If you put this up on YouTube, I'll probably embed it. I'm not going to steal it, but I can simply embed it and say, hey, I had a great time talking with Liam about this topic. Here's a great summary blog post. This way I get more out of having, spending my time and having these conversations, and provide great value for my audience. And also, I'll be linking back to your website, to your podcast. So it's like a win-win-win situation. You win, I win, and people that are interested in this topic, they get a written form blog post out of this. Yeah.
It feels like we've covered the meat and bones of what's important. Great quality content and being in as many places as possible, or as Neil Patel puts it, search everywhere optimization. I want to talk about a few of the kind of, maybe they're grey hat methodologies, maybe they're just kind of interesting things that can be additive here. But first, I'd like to talk about like LLMs.txt and Robots.txt and having those files on your website. Can you explain that for the audience, and if it works and if it's
Yeah.
important?
Yes, I mean, robots.txt, absolutely no brainer. Like if you don't know what that is, just do a search on your preferred platform. So that sits at the root of the website, where you tell the bots that get to your website what you would like them to do or not like them to do. So make sure, educate yourself about what robots.txt is and how to best use it. TXT. So as of right now, the posting of this podcast, Google is not supported. Okay, that they have mentioned it many, many times that it doesn't do anything. Could that change tomorrow? 100%, right? So basically, LLM.txt, that is a file that specifically communicates with these generative AI tools, once they get to your website, oh my God, what is going on? Did you see that? I guess
We
that's the
started a
two.
disco show there.
Oh my
Wow.
God, back in the day. Um, LLM.txt. Oh, I guess I thought it was dancing by my hand gestures. If you do this, sometimes then so hard. Anyhow, LLM.txt. Am I super concerned about it right now? Absolutely not, because the main search engine told me that they don't use it right now. Google still dominates this game. Is it something that we have on our back burner? Absolutely. But I would say, if you're not familiar with robots.txt and LLM.txt, just do a little bit of research and see if it's worth your time adding that to your website.
What about featured.com? Where does that fit into the conversation? How prevalent and important is that now?
Man, you did your research.
I try.
That,
I try.
yeah, this is probably if you want to do one thing of, the things that I'm mentioning here, that's probably the one thing that I would do right now. If you do a search for international AI and SEO expert or international SEO expert, you'll find my name at the very top or in one of these AI overviews. That I contribute partially to using Featured. They just launched Featured.ai. They made some exciting updates to their platform. So if you're not familiar with Featured, just do a search. Go to featured.com or featured.ai. A lot of websites, they look for people like me that apparently can talk about this stuff in a meaningful way. Hopefully that's how people feel. And they ask for people to provide a quote. This platform connects me with people that are searching for people like me to share their, give their 2 cents on certain topics. And the title that I use is International AI and SEO Expert. So this is one of the personal brand building exercises that anybody can implement right away. So yeah, Featured is one of these tools that I would highly recommend as part of your brand building, EEAT building exercise, where in Featured you can set up a profile and add a title associated with your name. So I put international AI and SEO expert in there. I'm getting published a lot through Featured. But these search engines take a look at who's that person and what's that person's title. So that has worked incredibly well for me personally, getting myself recognized as an international AI SEO expert.
Yeah, I mean, I had Tom Winter recommend the same to me recently. We had him on the podcast a couple months ago. I should have been publishing more, but I think I've been featured once in Under 30 CEO in an article thus far. So it's a good tip to actually change my title into something that's
But yeah.
like, I guess, what I want it to be rather than just chief of operations. It's a bit vague and ambiguous and doesn't really help.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm thrilled that people find me, and this is why I get invited to speak on podcasts, right? People search for international AI as expert. My name pops up, they reach out, right? It further helps me establish my personal brand. So if you guys if you listen to this, if you use Featured, come up, do a little bit of keyword research. What are people actually searching for? And then use those keywords in your absolutely no-brainer, in my opinion.
A last question on other tactics here. What do you think about directories right now? We had a directory builder on the podcast not so long ago. It's been like kind of big topic of conversation, how quickly people can create these. Greg Eisenberg's covered it a lot. What do you think of them? How well do they work? Do you see that changing? What even is a directory? If you can explain that to the audience.
And I think I know who you're talking about. I think I had them on my podcast. It's a very big platform that we're on, obviously. So my take on directories, if you want to do a little bit off page yourself, that's the practice of optimizing things outside of your website, directories, Google Business Profile, press releases, etc. Stuff that gets published about you outside of your website on the internet. Just do a Google search for your main target SEO keywords, and then check the first 2 pages on Google. If directories pop up in relation to that search term, you need to be added to that directory. It's a piggyback strategy where oftentimes these directories, they're search engines themselves, right? That get indexed by, the search giant and now these new tools. If they pop up in relation to the keywords that you want to be found for, you need to be in there, right? It's so straightforward. Don't go crazy with a million directories. Just pick the ones that actually show up in search and then add yourself there, because then you have a better chance to be found in those directories, because clearly Google likes those directories if they show them on page 1 or 2. So you increase your chance of not only A, getting a backlink from a high quality relevant directory, but B, you potentially get found, right? If people head over to that directory and continue to search for what they're looking for.
Instead of just being featured on a directory, what do you think about creating directories yourself, being a directory owner? Where does that fit into the conversation for you?
Would I want to do that? Absolutely not. I don't have time. It's something that great question, by the way. It's something that I thought about. I don't have the time, energy to do it right now. It is a bit of, it's sort of like a gray hat SEO strategy. What you can do is, create a top 10 list of whatever it is that you do, and then create an amazing piece of content. You're going to have to list your competitors, right? Ahrefs does that a lot. That's another tool where they create, or like, let's say other people do that, where they create a list of the top 10 things they would want to be found for. And then they obviously strategically place themselves as one of the top contenders. It's definitely a gray hat strategy that seems to work right now. I could see that that is not going to work much longer, because it is a gray hat strategy that already goes into, sort of the black area, but, worth trying. Hopefully you're not going to get penalized by doing so.
I'm conscious of time. We've got around 15 minutes left, so I wanna ask a few kind of random questions I have, and then finish off with like your kind of predictions for the future. I know obviously you work internationally. You are working in Strasbourg. I imagine you do that remotely in terms of your lecturing, or that's in person.
No, so that's remotely. And
Okay.
incidentally, I'm actually from Basel, Switzerland, which is about an hour south of Strasbourg, France. But it's a very popular master's degree through the University of Strasbourg. And there's actually a lot of Americans in this program. Why? Education is a lot more affordable in Europe. And then,
Yep.
they get to have instructors like me. So yeah, I'm a teacher. I love teaching. I'm very passionate about what I do. And then, I don't have a lot of time, but I'm able to run one course or teach one course I like, and keeps me also on my toes. I want to make sure that my students learn great content. So I have to constantly do research and make sure that it's 100% up to date, that they learn really relevant, great information that will help them advance their career.
It's awesome to hear. And kind of where my line of questioning with this was going is obviously you work internationally. Have you noticed a difference in awareness, firstly, and adoption of these new kind of SEO principles, this awareness of generative engine optimization? Does it change by country to country? Is the US leading the charge here?
So definitely, since Google is a US-based company, they initially roll anything out first in the US. And then it seems India, they prefer certain regions or countries, the UK, and then it slowly rolls out, across Europe and other markets. So yes, I think we're always ahead of the curve here in the US. At least I certainly enjoy having access to all the new things before anybody else in the world does. So I do think naturally we have an unfair advantage if you're an SEO GEO company in the US. And then also I seem to get early access to whatever Google tests in terms of AI. I sign up and I immediately get access to be a beta tester on whatever they're testing, rolling out. So I seem to have access to all the relevant information early on, which of course I make sure we implement, we include that in our strategy. So it feels like we're always a little bit ahead of the game. When I speak at conferences, I'm like, I quiz people, hey, are you doing this? Have you heard about this? And it's usually one or two out of 10 people that do. So this makes me sleep better, just knowing that we're a little bit ahead of the curve. Yeah. So you're right. It is a fact. Yeah, that's happening.
I think beyond that as well, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems as if what's happening right now with the opportunity in AI and AI overviews and generative engine optimization is such a fundamental shift in how people search for information that the majority of websites and companies worldwide aren't that aware of and aren't that up to speed with. Going into the future, you seeing just an opportunity where there's going to become this massive disparity between people that actually undertake the learnings that we're talking about today and apply them, and they'll just be miles ahead of all the other millions of websites that are out there and aren't undertaking these principles. What does that future look like?
Man, do you have access to my calendar? Yesterday, I met with the CEO of Duda, which is a content management system, similar like Wix, Squarespace, WordPress. So we met in person and I actually recorded a podcast with him, Itai Sedan. Highly recommend if you're watching this podcast, just do a search for Chris Raulf or Duda podcast. So we spoke, my business partner and I spoke to him for about an hour about exactly what you asked me, right? So Duda, they are, in my opinion, so far ahead of the game in terms of how they utilize AI and new technology to make their websites that are built on the Duda platform more discoverable, indexable, and searchable. So they're implementing so many new things that I think they're way ahead of the game. Also on that topic, Itai is super smart guy. He's thinking about in the not so distant future, you and I and many people, we're going to use agentic AI tools where we tell the tool, hey, I'm going to go to Paris next week. I want to visit the Eiffel Tower. I want to do the glass domain at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Also want I want to go to the catacombs. Here's access to my calendar, Google Calendar. Here's my credit card. Make it happen. This is what's happening right now. So these websites, these tools, agentic AI tools, they will trust websites that are built for those interactions. So we're gonna live in a world of AI agent talking to AI agent. We're just the order giver, right? And that's what's happening right now. So you and I will be using agentic AI tools to get things done, these platforms need to be optimized for AI agent to AI agent communication. They are way ahead of the game. So this is where we're going, right? And maybe we can talk again in, 6 months from now when the world has completely changed and we're like, oh yeah, back then, we spoke about this and now here we are in a completely changed world. Yep. So I'm excited that I had the opportunity to speak with Itai, the CEO of Duda, and to get a really first glimpse at what's happening with their platform. I'm sure their competition is, working on that as well, but things are changing as we speak.
I've got two more questions just to finish off. One kind of leads off of that, and then one's just completely unrelated. So the one that leads off of that is looking at this future that has agentic AI. You're obviously an expert at what you do. You've got your fingers in a million different pies. What are you spending time learning right now? And what are you marking time for as well? Like podcasts, books, people you're listening to. What do you want to learn? What do you think is important to learn right now?
Yeah, so about a year ago, I still bought books on AI. Like the day they're published, they're 4 months, 5 months behind, right?
Yeah.
So I'm listening to podcasts like yours. I listen obviously to the big players in the industry, Sam Altman, Sundar Pichai, the head of DeepMind at Google. There's like probably 10, 15 people that that's what they do every day. They are tasked to advance AI to, AGI seems to be the next thing that we need to accomplish. So I listen to podcasts, reviews, YouTube videos every day, probably 2, 3 hours, simply because this stuff is advancing so rapidly. And I got to make sure that we're ahead of the curve so that our customers get the best results for what they're paying us. And that's only possible if we are an AI first agency. So that's what I do every day. When I go for, my wife and I like to hike. Sometimes we're cut off from the internet for, oh my God, 2 or 3 days, right? I feel FOMO, fear of missing out, where, something could have happened that's super important. So I read a lot, I know who to follow. I know who to, watch, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what I do. That's my job as part of the head of this company to make sure that we can then translate that knowledge into our processes so that we can get our customers the best possible results.
Yeah, I think taking the time out of your day to just sit and learn and listen and understand the macro perspective of what's going on is something that I have just had to do naturally, writing the newsletter for so long and being involved as an editor of that. Like you are putting your fingers in a million different things and like understanding that. But even since kind of moving on from writing the core newsletter, we've got Amanda that does that now. I still take hours out of my day every single day to listen to podcasts, to understand interviews, to read material online because it is advancing so rapidly. It is something that I always recommend to people, regardless of how they're working with AI or if it's just like something that's beginning to interest them, is understanding that macro perspective will help you kind of figure out where the opportunities are within your business as well. Something will always click when you take an hour or two out of your time.
And then, so I have to tell myself, it's okay. I will never
This
ever
is
know
work.
everything. Yeah, it's just like, but at least I have to, do my best to try to figure it out.
Yeah.
That seems to be working, but it is overwhelming. I'm sure you feel overwhelmed with how fast this stuff is. Yeah.
Yeah, every day, every single day. I mean, it changes so rapidly, and we work in the content game, right? So content or modules or training modules that we produced 3 months ago just fucking disappear in an instant because Google released some new AI feature and ChatGPT's released a new plugin and MCP protocol exists now. So it's like SaaS businesses are just disappearing and content we produce is just disappearing in relevance.
Exactly. I mean, look at ChatGPT. They just launched 5.0, which is a complete game changer. This morning I had to watch a YouTube video by another person that seems to be interested in what we do here. It is a complete game changer. For the first time, it's like a multi-model system where I don't have to figure out which model I need to use for the task, right? That's a complete game changer. And now all the other tools, they have to keep up with that, right? So today, or like whenever that was launched a few days ago, that's upping the game. So I am overwhelmed and excited and happy at the same time. And, it's an exciting time right now. And, just try to keep grounded and not go crazy. That's what I try to do.
You mentioned a lot of emotions there: excited, overwhelmed, optimistic about the future. And I usually ask all my podcast guests one question to kind of finish off. And you kind of take what context you want from the question and answer it how you want. I'm not going to provide any further instruction. But my last question for you, Chris, is why do you do what you do?
Oh, I love it. I'm still as passionate about SEO as I was from the very first day. So I just hit 55. I played soccer all my life. Since I was a tiny little boy, I still play soccer once or twice a week with the old guys now. It's still the same, right? I'm as excited to play soccer. Same thing with SEO. It's like when my teacher told me a long time ago, there's a search engine called Google. They were called Backrub back then, and it's way better than anything else. And I looked at it and got interested in SEO. I am still as excited about this as I was back in 95, 96. That's why I do this, and I will do it until, I'm probably passed on, or it's just a very exciting technology and way of making money. So I'm as passionate as back then. I think that's my answer.
Awesome. Well, Chris, I want to thank you first of all for taking the time today and talking to me. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience has as well. And secondly, if people want to find out more about who you are and what you do, apart from Googling top SEO international consultant, how else do they find out about you and what you do?
Yeah, so my personal website, chrisraulf.com, right there is the name. So just search for my name, you'll find a ton of information. So you can head over that website, or then my business is Boulder, SEOmarketing.com, BOULDER, SEO marketing. And then if you just Google my name, you'll probably find the most relevant, up-to-date information on what I'm up to. Yeah, so I'm always open to connecting with like-minded people. Certainly appreciate you having me on your podcast, Liam. That was actually a very good conversation. I really enjoyed it. You seem to know what you're doing there as well. So I really appreciate the
Awesome.
opportunity. Yeah.
That's always good to hear. And you said it, I think, once or twice in there. You went, that's a good question. And when I hear that, I'm like, right, I've done a good job in my research. That's enough.
Yeah, you've done a good job. So I appreciate that.
All right, Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.